Iran's supreme leader says US threats will get them nowhere in response to Donald Trump's warning of possible military action against Iran. Meanwhile, the Iran-backed Houthi rebels have targeted Israel with 2 missiles intercepted. Sudan's army says it has recaptured the presidential palace from the paramilitary rapid support forces. This marks a major turning point as RSF control in the African country dwindles in recent weeks. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels continue to advance deeper into the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. This comes despite peace talks between the DRC and Rwanda calling for an immediate ceasefire. More than 40 men have now come forward accusing the former chief exec of Abercrombie & Fitch of rape, sexual assault and drugging. Mike Jeffries, who was charged with sex trafficking in October, has denied all previous allegations against him. We start off in Europe, and investigators continue to explore the cause of the fire near Heathrow Airport, though they believe it was not deliberate. Counter-terrorism detectives are involved as a precaution, providing their specialist skill set. Authorities stress the importance of monitoring due to Heathrow's status as critical national infrastructure amid rising concerns over espionage and sabotage. This move comes after a massive fire at an electrical substation near London's Heathrow Airport caused widespread disruption. It's left tens of thousands of travellers stranded and forced the closure of the airport throughout the day. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in close contact with partners regarding the Heathrow substation fire, receiving regular updates. He acknowledged the disruption and thanked emergency workers for their efforts. The blaze, which occurred at a substation in Hayes, West London, led to power outages affecting nearly 5,000 homes, while leaving approximately 1,350 flights to be cancelled or delayed. Flights are being diverted all over Europe, including 5 flights diverted to the UK's Manchester Airport, around 200 miles north of London. The cause of the fire is under investigation, with counter-terrorism police leading it. Authorities are focusing on a transformer that contained 25,000 litres of cooling fluid. Emergency services were called to the scene late last night, where video footage showed large flames and heavy smoke pouring from the substation. Firefighters managed to bring the blaze under control, though 10% of it approximately is still on fire. The London Fire Brigade and Metropolitan Police are working, of course, to determine the cause. In the wake of the fire, local residents were evacuated and schools were closed. National Grid has restored power to most areas, but nearly 5,000 homes remain without electricity. A Heathrow Airport spokesperson acknowledged the disappointment for passengers and reassured that efforts are underway to resolve the situation as quickly as possible. Let's listen in to what Jonathan Smith, who is the London Fire Brigade Deputy Commissioner, has updated us on this matter.
As of the most recent update that I have received, approximately 10% remains alight, and we are working with SSE to safely resolve this incident. As a result of the incident, 67,000 households were left without power. Currently, 5,000 homes remain without power. There remains no power at Heathrow Airport Terminal 2 or Terminal 4.
Well, joining us to discuss the impacts of this fire and further developments is Vandana Singh, who is an aviation expert joining us from India. Vandana, thank you very much for being here. We've spoken, of course, about the fire just then, but I really want to look now at the global implications that this fire has. We know almost 300,000 passengers are going to be affected, but what is the ripple effect that that has on the global flights and the global flight paths that we see?
Firstly, thank you for having me on your show. Do you read me Strength 5? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you absolutely fine.
Thank you so much. So first and foremost, it's very, very unfortunate that this incident has happened. And I'm sure, as you rightfully mentioned, the authorities are looking into the fact as to why this happened, why there was no backup, and why, if there was a backup, why was the backup within the same area, what happened to the infrastructure, the preventive maintenance, the predictive maintenance and all of the things that I question. But that's the other side of it for the authorities to look into it, where the London Fire Brigade has done a fantabulous job. However, all said and done, please look at the global impact to the personnel, to the passengers, to the airlines as such. And now you're looking at an impact where you have flights coming in from all over the world, from Southeast Asia, from Australia, from US, from each and every place. And Heathrow, as we know, is one of the busiest, the second busiest airport in the world after Dubai. And you are talking of one day's impact of odd 300,000 passengers, and how much impact it has on airlines such as British Airways, which has 51% of the share over there, followed by Virgin Atlantic and Lufthansa. Passengers, the crew, their rosters are all gone for a six. The pilots, the whole roster again. The aircrafts as such are not, the planes are not where they should be. Everywhere they are scuttering to land somewhere here or there. But imagine the global impact of such a situation, and imagine the ripple effect. The ripple effect is that this is going to continue for days. Cannot we forget what happened with the ash clouds when they happened years back when the volcano erupted, or for that matter, certain storms that happened before. Now, in this case, we are talking about a catastrophic event that has happened. And my question would here be, was the planning in order? Was there a backup? Was there a backup after a backup? We don't see there was any backup. We don't see there was anything happening over there. And the ripple effect is that the passengers are going to suffer. There is chaos and disruptions. When you're calling an airline, I've also just come off a flight in the morning. When you call an airline, then the airline is saying, please kindly wait for the text or kindly wait for the next message. We are here to help you. But obviously, they themselves don't know what to do or what to say or how to help the passenger in this case. Forget the holiday passengers or the business passengers. Think of the the whole disruption in the entire area, the amount of people who have been perhaps out of their homes, how many homes have been affected. The fire is still not contained, and the utter chaos that this is causing, not just in UK but the entire globe, because nobody knows where to go, and everybody will fly via Heathrow. This is why the third runway is coming up, and I'm aghast to see that if this be the planning, the way the things are being planned, then what could happen elsewhere, and how the passengers are being affected. And airlines are not to be blamed for this, but then again, Heathrow was totally dependent on this substation line, and I do not know why there was not any alternate source of energy. When we talk so much about artificial intelligence, wasn't there any predictive maintenance? Wasn't there something coming up for the infrastructure? Heathrow is one of the most expensive airports in the world. Wasn't there something planned for the infrastructure? Wasn't there some backup and backups and backup? Yes. And I'm questioning all of that. And if this would happen to us here in India, what would the situation be? What would the planning be? These are the questions to be answered. But just coming back to your question, yes, the whole globe is affected.
Absolutely.
None of us are affected.
Yes, I want to, sorry to cut you off there, Vandana. I want to look now at the economic impact. We've seen stocks of airlines falling. We've also know that flights are going to be rebooked, and that's going to be a costly process. So how big is the impact on the economy if today happens, but also if the sort of blackout continues into tomorrow as well?
Exactly. So we are first of all seeing the situation. We are saying at 11:59, which is midnight tonight, things should be coming back in shape, but no, sir. They are not going to come back in shape for another couple of days. That's for sure. And then you look at passenger rights. What does the poor passenger do? What does the airline do? What does the travel agency do? Now, these are questions that need to be answered. And yes, the economy is definitely affected. it's not just impacting the United Kingdom or the airlines, it is impacting each and every one of us. The impact is going to be huge. So in my view, we really need to look as to how and why this incident could not be avoided. And if this happened, then why wasn't there some precaution taken? Why wasn't there some predictive maintenance, as I said? Why weren't systems in place? Why did it lead to such chaos? I mean, human life has been saved. The safety and security comes first for us as humans. That is saved. But apart from it, everything is chaotic. So for me to really give a multiple of how much the economic impact is going to be there is going to be a difficult one, but the figures is going to run into millions of pounds here. I can assure you that, sir.
Yes.
Over to you.
Vandana Singh, thank you very much for joining us. This is something we will, of course, be following as the fallout continues. But we do have to move on. And Sudan's military announced that it had retaken the Republican Palace in Khartoum. This marks the last heavily guarded stronghold of rival paramilitary forces in the capital. The capture of the palace is seen as a symbolic victory for the Sudanese military in its fight against the Rapid Support Forces. However, it does not signal the end of the war. The RSF still controls areas in Sudan's western Darfur region and other parts of the country. Social media videos showed soldiers inside the palace, giving the date as the 21st day of Ramadan. The palace appeared to be partly in ruins, with soldiers stepping on broken tiles. Armed soldiers chanted, "God is the greatest." Sudan's information minister Khalid Al-Issa confirmed the victory in a post on X, saying the flag is raised, the palace is back, and the journey continues until victory is complete. The Republican Palace is featured on Sudanese banknotes and postage stamps. Its fall represents another military gain for Sudan's armed forces. With the palace's retaking, the RSF has been largely driven out of Khartoum. RSF-linked politician Suleiman Sandal acknowledged the loss of the palace, calling it part of the ups and downs of history. The conflict has resulted in over 28,000 deaths, with millions displaced and severe food shortages. UNICEF condemned the looting of food aid meant for malnourished children. Sudan has been unstable since the removal of President Omar al-Bashir in 2019. A transition to democracy was interrupted by a 2021 military coup led by Burhan and Dagalo. The RSF and Sudan's military have fought each other since 2023. Both sides have been accused of human rights abuses during the conflict. However, both sides have denied these allegations. Let's hear what Sudanese army spokesman said.
الجمعة 21 مارس 2025 شعبنا الأبي الصامت في ملحمة بطولية خالدة توجت قواتنا اليوم نجاحاتها بمحاور الخرطوم، حيث تمكنت من سحق شراذم ميليشيا الدغل الإرهابية بمناطق وسط الخرطوم والسوق العربي ومباني القصر الجمهوري، رمز سيادة وعزة وكرامة الشعب السوداني.
Well, joining us to talk about the latest developments in Sudan and the wider implications is Charles Sinkala, who is an international relation consultant, joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. Charles, thank you very much for being here. Before we dive into what's happened in the past couple of days, could you provide some more context to us as to this conflict and what the ramifications of it are, both politically but also the wider reaching African region as well?
Thank you very much for having me, and greetings to your viewers. It is quite unprecedented in the history of Africa, where we who are Africans has elected, to have civilian rule as apart from having a military rule, and we continue to have these conflicts of certain segments of society who prefers that they can take government by arms and ammunition. It is quite disappointing. And if you look at the devastating impact in terms of how many people are killed through these civil conflicts, it's one that is not desired. But, to the continent, that the peace that we celebrate, especially on the southern part of Africa, is something that has to be commended, and that is the peace that we would like to have the west part of Africa, the eastern part of Africa, as well as the northern part of Africa, the Maghreb, that any process at all, if you have to change government, has to go through the democratic process where an elected leader has to be chosen among the candidates representing the people. Yes, the dethroning of al-Bashir in 2019 has left in nothing but a destruction of the country, which has not even seen any signs of survival, even to an extent that the government lost the control of the palace, which is the national symbol of the Sudanese people. But we can see now the celebration in terms of regaining those the control that they lost, and they should condemn any militia that are against the government, and we hope that the government should find regional organization support and as well as international community support to make sure that the rule of law is restored in Sudan.
Yes, Charles, of course, Sudan's military have made gains in recent weeks, but the paramilitary forces do still have some ground in Sudan. How important is it that the military makes these gains in terms of the humanitarian impact that we're seeing in Sudan currently?
Yes, we can see some sense of hope, as the Sudanese people were hopeless, to an extent that the government had lost control, and most of the militia had control most of the areas. As we speak now, most of the areas are still in control of the militian groups. But notwithstanding that, the government has made strides in terms of trying to regain control. But it is also important that the government of Sudan should make sure that this such an occurrence in terms of losing control. Governance is about the control of the people. It's about the control and offering peace and security for the citizen. It's about making sure that there's hope in the country. It's about, punishing the lawbreakers. And if the lawbreakers, continue to take over some cities like what has happened, it becomes a lawless nation.
Yes, Charles, to bring an end to this discussion, of course, tens of thousands of deaths reported during this conflict. What needs to be done in Sudan, but also maybe with support of other nations, to make sure that death toll doesn't rise too much?
Conflict in the Sudan is a conflict in Nairobi. Conflict in Nairobi is a conflict in Nigeria. And conflict in Nigeria is a conflict in South Africa. I'm calling on all regional organizations and bodies, including heads of states and government, that we have to look at the humanitarian crisis that are happening in the conflicts, especially on the continent, and the DRD in Sudan, which has had decades and decades of conflicts. Who can forget the split of the country between the South Sudan and Sudan? Those conflicts do not see any light to the end at the moment. Strategically, meetings through the organization, regional bodies, or the AU, the highest organ in the African community, including also the United Nations Security Council, should sit in terms of formulating lasting solutions to ensure that these conflicts are investigated and the perpetrators and the fueling of these conflicts are destroyed, so that such an occurrence can stop. But we can see that a lot of actors, non-state actors and including governments, are funding such conflicts for the benefit of their military mechanism that has been selling arms and ammunition, because they supply arms to these war-torn zones.
Charles Sinkala, thank you very much for your insight. We will, of course, be keeping an eye on the developments in Sudan and also across Africa. But we now head to the Middle East. And Israel's Supreme Court has just frozen Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to dismiss Shin Bet chief Ronan Bar pending appeals. Amid political protest, Bar's removal is tied to a corruption investigation into Netanyahu's office. In Gaza, the UN's relief agency warns that ceasefire progress is being reversed as Israeli airstrikes kill at least 91 Palestinians. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz vows to increase pressure on Hamas, including implementing Trump's migration plan and seizing more Gazan land if hostages remain in captivity. The UN Security Council has called for diplomacy amid growing tensions. Meanwhile, 59 Israeli hostages, both dead and alive, are still being held by Hamas. Well, joining us to discuss both of these latest developments that we're getting from Israel and Gaza is Lev Aaron, who is a senior journalist joining us from Israel. Lev, thank you very much for being here. I first want to talk about the Supreme Court that has frozen Benjamin Netanyahu's decision and the cabinet's decision to get rid of Ronan Bar. How significant is this move from the Supreme Court, and how much does it challenge Netanyahu's authority in Israel?
First of all, thank you for having me. As far as Israelis are concerned, it is more dramatic what happened in the Supreme Court than what happens right now in Gaza, because it was crystal clear from the beginning that Netanyahu agreed for the first phase of the agreement and then to sign also the second one, only because he wanted to comply to Trump's policy. Otherwise, Netanyahu would never sign a political agreement with Hamas right now. It means the collapse of his government, and it means that he will not have the next tenure. He will go to opposition. This is what all pollsters say. So it is not a surprise that once Trump himself did not want the second phase, of course, let alone Netanyahu didn't want it. Now, if we look inside into Israel, maybe it is the first time in Israeli history that there is a non-zero chance that a prime minister will not comply to the Supreme Court, because this is what Netanyahu said yesterday. Netanyahu said, if the Supreme Court will not let me boot out the head of the Shin Bet, of the Secret Service, this time I will not be obedient to the Supreme Court. So we are facing a unique moment in Israeli history.
Yes, Lev, I want to look at the